Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
Welcome to the Umbrella Rebellion. Today on the podcast, we are going to talk about Marcy's experience at the ATI IBLP headquarters last week. If you haven't watched it yet or listened to it yet, I went into my story about headquarters and my experience and just kind of some of my observations, I guess, while I was there. So we're kind of going to delve into Marcy's story. I thought mine was going to be quick, but I had lots to say, apparently.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. So we kind of touched on it a little bit in our previous episodes, but let's just, for people who are just joining us, let's kind of go over, like, when did you start at headquarters and kind of start from there?
Okay, so the way that I got to headquarters, just as a recap, to get to headquarters, that was invite only, so invitation only. So it was a bit exclusive, which just meant that somebody at headquarters had to know somebody and they had to invite you there. You couldn't just go up there to volunteer in most cases, unless you were an encouragement case, which is somebody that was going there for counseling or, just for help, that maybe their family asked for help. So the summer that I graduated in 98, I worked that whole summer to earn money to go to a program called Excel, which was kind of like a girls finishing school. I think we went over that in the other video. And while I was there, my roommate was a perfectly normal person and had issues with their very strict rules. And so was consequently in trouble quite a bit, which brought me to the attention of leadership because I was her roommate. And so that got me noticed by staff there. And it just so happened that the director of that program was also director of staffing at headquarters. So that was my in, because he knew me and knew that they were always needing staff because there was a huge turnover rate. And so as soon as Excel was finished, which was probably in November, I think they called in December or January, I forget, but it was after the holidays probably. They called and invited me to come up there to work.
Okay. And
so they explained there was two different levels. You could go and just volunteer and not be paid, but they would cover part of your food. And then some meals were provided and they covered your housing. Or if you had been there long enough, then you might get paid a very small amount hourly. I really, really, really wanted to do this because it was one of the only opportunities that it opened up for service stuff. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. So I didn't know much about headquarters. I just knew it was a big, important place.
Right.
And they told me that I would be working probably in the international department.
Okay.
Which was a very small office that handled, so ATI had a lot of different training centers in other countries, and they handled delegations of people coming from other countries, was what the international department did. So I went up and started working in the international department. Now, I was supposed to be a secretary for the director of this department, right?
Okay.
I'm coming there with absolutely no experience at all. I didn't even know how to type very well.
Oh, wow.
Well, obviously I couldn't help him with notes. And I was so green. It was a wonder that they kept me in the office as long as they did. But, so kudos to them for being very gracious with a very green ATI girl. But
wouldn't that be pretty much almost all of the people that come to headquarters?
Really, honestly, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we were new to headquarters, then usually they were very green about everything.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Little to no real world experience.
exactly. Never been away from home.
Right.
I don't think I had been away from home. Excel was 8 weeks.
Okay.
So this was the first time, and I had done several other things, but not for longer than 2 weeks at a time. So Excel was a stretch for me for 8 weeks away from home. And it was in very dormitory, very secluded type of, very sheltered type of setting that you really weren't allowed out of the building except for once a day to walk for an hour, essentially. So this was going and living by myself, not by myself, but with several other girls in a house. This was in Chicago versus Tulsa, Oklahoma. I had my own car, which was rare. And, I was in charge of eating my own food and going to the grocery store. It was a new experience. It was more freedom than I had ever experienced before.
Okay.
Even as sheltered as that is, we had to ask permission to go off campus. They had to know where you were. We had curfew. Couldn't be gone out later than 9 o'clock at night. If you didn't do that, you got called on it. For a while there, just as a side note, but for a while there, they had checklists that you had, like accountability checklists that you had to check off, and they were turned into the personnel director each week. And if they saw a discrepancy on what you reported or that you were late to curfew, they would call you and ask you why, or call you on it. They would call you on the carpet. So if you're being honest and writing it down the right way, you would get in trouble for it. That only lasted for so long, just like everything else at headquarters. But
Right.
Anyway, or you get reported by somebody in your house. You never know who.
Right.
Yep. Let's see. So I digress. So that was in 99. So I think January of 99 was when I went to headquarters the first time. And I stayed there the whole year until the end of 99. And I was in the international department to begin with. I think I was there for like 3 months. And then I went to the registration department, which helped them run the basic and advanced seminars. So we handled registration for all of the seminars. So anybody calling in or people that were sending in packets of registration that they had taken in their town, then we would enter it in the computer and they would base their numbers for the seminars off of that, and how much material to send.
Okay.
They had a whole seminar department in the lower floor that would handle all that. So I did the rest of the time there. I did work the front desk for a little while, and every morning Mr. Gothard worked in the staff center. So there's 2 different buildings. Staff center had his office and was where we had meals and weekend meetings. The other one was the huge building that housed all the other offices. But he would come and check in with everybody once a day in the morning. So he would come through that front door and past the front desk and then do his little morning rounds, and then we'd go back to his office. So my hair was extremely curly and I had permed it to tame the frizz. So it was probably as curly as yours.
Okay.
But it was long. It was down here. So big man of curly hair, right? And Mr. Gothard has a type. So he likes soft curls. He likes blonde girls. So I was not that at all. And so after several weeks of seeing me up there at the front desk, he complained, and they pulled me and put me in a back office where I couldn't be seen, and replaced me with a brand new person that he had handpicked, so that he could look at her every time he came in the front door.
Okay, so I have to add on to that because obviously I'm curly haired as well. When I was at headquarters and I was changing from the kitchen to do something else, there was nobody at the front desk.
Yes.
And I don't know if I had asked about it or somebody mentioned that. And I'm like, oh, well, why couldn't I've done secretarial type stuff for years.
Yeah.
So I was like, why couldn't I? And they're like, you have curly hair. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I think we'll get into at another time, is because
Yes.
some of the teachings of ATI and IBLP was that you have unchangeables.
Yes. Yes. It was
curly
totally
hair.
Mm-hmm.
Curly hair is an unchangeable. And so for Mr. Gothard to frown upon people being in a position where they will see a lot of people
Yes.
because they have this unchangeable thing. It's like, well, you're not supposed to change your unchangeables, and
Yes.
there's supposed to be things that you're supposed to be proud about, not really proud about, but
Yes.
you're not supposed to feel bad about them, right?
Mhm. Right.
But Mr. Gothard was going to make you feel bad if you had curly hair.
Yes. Well, and the funny thing was that so I guess when this was mentioned to my supervisor in the registration department, sweet lady, she came to me and she said, "Is there any way that you can soften your hair?" And I said, "Like what?" And she's like, "Just can you just soften your curls a little bit for me?" And I said, "I don't think so, but I will try tonight if you would like me to." She said, "Yes, please try," because she had just trained. I had been training on the front desk for a long time. It was hard to get to know. It was a massive phone system, massive. And this was the main line. So, and I was good at it. And I knew I had all the numbers memorized, everything. So she was going to have to retrain somebody. They got rid of me. And so, and also she really didn't have another position to put me in, kind of your thing where they put you somewhere weird because they didn't have another position. Same problem with me. So I didn't see, this is all hindsight. I didn't see this coming at me at the time. And I didn't completely understand what had happened until many years later. But so I went home, I blow dried my hair out. It was a lion's mane.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Okay. It was absolutely ridiculously out of control. Also, I did not know how to handle curly hair very well at all because it had always been encouraged to be natural. So didn't have any idea. So I tried it out. I tried curling it. It was a horrible disaster. I went back into my supervisor the next morning and said, "I can't do this. You should have seen this. I was a lion. It was horrible. It was awful. There's no way I can get it to soften." And she's like, "Okay, well, never mind then." And then I got stuck in the back office doing one of the least favorite activities in that office. So I did that until I left at the end of that year. So my parents brought me back at the end of '99 because they were afraid of Y2K. And they encouraged me to stay home. Of course, I wanted to go back to headquarters because I really liked being free to a certain extent.
Right.
At home. Right.
Right.
Well, I'm the oldest of 6 kids and a lot was expected of me. And I had to run the home while my mom was out. And so, and a lot of things like that. And I was tired of doing that work.
You were tired of being second mom.
Yes, I was absolutely tired of being second mom. And that's exactly what I was doing all the time. I mean, I did that all through high school. I was trying to school myself. So this was new freedom. So this was fun. And the only type of freedom I had access to. So I came home for a few months. I got a job in between. They called back and I think I went back by March of the next year. So I was only gone for maybe 8 weeks. And that time I ended up being in their staffing department. And so I got to do all the coordinating for staff coming in. So they had quotas on how many kids could be in a house and where they stayed. So as new staff would come in, I would decide where they were at and where our ratios were okay for them to stay, whether it was in the dormitory or the apartments or the houses that we had. And they trained me to do tours. So I did tours of the production center. So I enjoyed that job a lot. I forget where I went next. I bounced around to several different offices, but did that one. I think I did seminars for a little while where they planned the dates of the seminars and kind of coordinated basing in advance. But by that time, those were dying off. They were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So even in the 4 years that I was there, they went from very prevalent to not so much. And then toward the tail end of that experience, they started a program called Verity. And so I don't know whether there was a growing concern with parents that their children weren't going to college, or if this was just a new and bright idea that Mr. Gothard got set onto, because this happened quite often. He'd get excited about an idea and then it would die out really fast. but this was a new and exciting idea. You could do college from home. You could do it in 2 years instead of 4. This really elaborate, very not planned idea. and my mother wanted so badly for me to come home, and I was like, no. And so I signed up for Verity, and they said I could do school and run their be their registrar at the same time. So I was in charge of people signing up for this new program. We had nothing ready when we went to Knoxville. We had very little setup, but we were trying to do a pilot program. And I forget how many students we had that first pilot program, maybe 20. I don't even remember.
Was that like in 2003?
Yes. No, okay. Well, it may have been at the end of 2002, because 2003 was when I left, and we already had students there, and they had been there for a semester or two. It was at least a semester already.
Okay.
So Knoxville would have been in July. So this would have been 2002.
Okay. Because when I was there from October to December of 2002, I know Verity was talked about quite a lot.
Yes.
And I had even kind of like thought about possibly doing Verity for a while. Mm-hmm. So like, wasn't Verity up at Northwoods?
No, Northwoods was off limits for anything other than Mr. Gothard and very few conferences, very few. So it was in Flint, Michigan. So they had just attained
Flint. That's right.
They had just attained Flint's training center, and it had just finished going through like an overhaul of like a remodel, and they still weren't done when we moved Verity in there, but it was the only available training center.
Right.
And so that's where we were sent. They debuted Verity at Knoxville. I talked myself hoarse because they put our table behind the choir, and the choir was singing, and I had 50 million parents at this table saying, "Tell me about it." And I was trying to scream over the choir. So, and I was the registrar. So obviously I was the person in charge of signing up all these people. I had no idea what I was doing. So that fall we traveled between headquarters. We had some headquarters time, and we had some Flint, Michigan time. Most staff for Verity were in Flint, but me and the director of the program and his assistant would travel back and forth.
Oh, okay.
Because he wanted to keep our presence in headquarters. He knew how the system worked. He knew if we were not in front of Mr. Gothard that we would get forgotten, and that the program would fail, that it would die. And he was right.
Yeah.
And so we tried to keep that until Mr. Gothard got frustrated with it and sent us all to Flint and said, "I'm done." And I lasted maybe 2 months in Flint before I left for home. In the midst of that, watching that program happen and its inception, and then how Mr. Gothard handled it, and then we had an issue with some students there that we had that where it's kind of it wasn't the only thing, but it was what broke the straw for me, because Mr. Gothard came in and talked to us and lied to us about the situation. And he also lied to us about how it was being handled. And thank goodness that the director of the program had the honesty to come to us and the foresight to come to us and tell us as staff what the truth of what was going on first, before Mr. Gothard even got to us.
Oh.
He called an early meeting and said, "Come in and talk with me first, because I want you to hear the true story." And then Mr. Gothard came in, and bunch of junk, words I could use for that. And that's when my rosy colored glasses came off. I was already questioning some, but that was the last straw for me. So I had already been kind of listening to music that I wasn't supposed to be listening to for probably 3 months leading up to that. And I had, watched movies. We weren't allowed to do that there. I would take my computer in the car and watch movies in my car on my laptop. I even had friends join me in the car. We would park where nobody could see us and watch movies in the car. Horrible, sinful things like Mission Impossible. So, or Italian Job. That was a favorite, right?
Oh, that was good. I like that movie.
Yes, it was a good one. So not anything horrible, just
Right.
just doing what
Run of the mill, action adventure.
Yeah, but it was forbidden, so we would have been sent home for that. So that was hidden. So I'd already started down that road a little bit and had started questioning some things, and I branched out and started reading different books that had been forbidden before. Also, very sinful things like The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter because it was magic.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a couple of the first Harry Potter books that are there too. So there was some premise to that, but that broke the camel's back. And I said, I'm done. And I came home very broken and very disillusioned because, I thought all this stuff that I'd been taught since I was 5 or 6 were lies. And I had invested 4 years at their headquarters and it was all lies. And I was starting to see that I couldn't function in the real world unless I did something different. So I lived at home for a few months. When I came back, I tried to finish Verity's program and completely failed because it was not planned and I was in too much of I would really say depression coming out of it, that I just couldn't do school. So I got a job, I got an apartment, went into deep debt trying to just pay bills because I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how much money I needed to make at a job. I didn't have a lot of job skills, so I couldn't get a very good job. And it went from there. So.
Okay. So I'm trying to think. So you said that there was like an issue with some of the students. Like, was there like, and you don't have to go into detail if you don't want to.
I don't even remember the names of the students involved, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're just not going to get anybody in trouble. One of the Flint staff members that ran the Flint facility was the son of a long-term employee to Mr. Gothard, very close to Mr. Gothard, probably like 20 years in his service or something like that at one training center or another. Got sexually involved with one of our students. But the student that was ours was the female. So obviously the scapegoat. And so this went on for a while and then it finally came to light. And so the girl got sent home. The boy got sent to Northwoods as was custom. If whatever immoral thing they found a guy in, they always got counseling from Mr. Gothard at Northwoods, which just meant it took him out of the limelight. Things died down and then they could do what they wanted, especially since he was the son of a very valued, loyal staff member.
Yeah, so he wasn't going to.
Nothing could happen to him. Nothing could happen to him because it was Mr. Gothard's prized person.
So what did Mr. Gothard tell y'all that was like?
That was the lie?
Yeah.
It was very convoluted. So that was the base level story of why. So the director of Verity wanted to handle the situation in a much better, much more equitable manner. Mm-hmm. So he didn't want the girls to get sent home. He didn't want the boy to go to Northwoods. I forget what all he argued for, but it was a much fairer way to handle the situation. And Mr. Gothard just wanted to handle it wrong like he always had. Mm-hmm. And so Trent disagreed with him. Trent was the director. He disagreed with him, and Mr. Gothard got angry with him. And so he wanted to fire the director. He wanted to rearrange everything. That's when all of us got sent from headquarters to Flint. And so he told us some cock and bull story about like some kind of allegory that was totally twisted, didn't make any sense about why he was okay to fire him over this problem with students and why he was handling the students the way he did. And I forget which question he answered no to, but he lied to us about how he was handling it when Trent had told us that he was handling it a different way. And he also made it sound like our director had said some things that he didn't. And so the only reason that we knew that that wasn't what he said, or that wasn't the twisted way that he had said it, was because he had told us before Mr. Gothard had gotten there. So Mr. Gothard took his story and did this to fit his agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see it happening.
Yeah.
So I forget the one statement that I knew right then. I was like, that is a bold-faced lie. He is lying through his teeth to us. But I just sat back in my chair and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, before that statement, you said that you had started to kind of like branch out and do things you weren't supposed to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
was there something that happened prior to that to make you question what you had been teaching and if it was right?
It was like a slow dawning. It wasn't like a wake-up call moment. It was kind of a slow dawning of, oh, when you don't have freedom, when you don't know what freedom is, which I didn't from home, I was too sheltered. And then I tasted this tiny bit of freedom at headquarters, even though it really wasn't freedom at all. It was more than I had at home. I started realizing, I can make decisions for myself. and that just kind of led into, I could actually, maybe not wear skirts all the time, which I had been doing since I was 12. I think a couple of the girls at headquarters were not required to wear skirts at home. Their families were less conservative than mine. Mine was on the more extreme end. And so I had gone home on holidays or summer vacations or whatever with them, and they didn't follow those rules. And so I didn't feel like I had to either. And it changed my view of what was necessary and that it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not being very articulate tonight, and I feel a little distorted in the story, but
it's okay. No, I mean, it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to remember all of that stuff because it's been so long as well.
It is. And things are coming back to me as we're talking, like, oh yeah, that was because of thus and such, or oh yeah, it was the friend's house that really kind of triggered, oh, well, these parents don't expect it, and my parents do, and we're all in the same program, and we all work at the same place, and we all think the same way. Why is that? What makes it different? And
right.
And it just put questions in my mind.
Mm-hmm. That there's people out there that are in this. And that's kind of what happened to me when I went to a friend's house for like Thanksgiving and Christmas. It was like, okay, there's different, like, it's like almost a spectrum, right? Like you have
it is a spectrum.
The super uber conservative that follow every word of Mr. Gothard, and then people who don't follow every single word of Mr. Gothard, and they've made decisions for themselves. But then they also hide it to a certain level as well.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you can't go to these things and not wear the attire, right? Like, they wouldn't be true to their convictions, per se, because they would put on the uniform that was expected of them.
Yes.
And so you would think that everybody was doing the same thing when they weren't.
Yeah. Agreed. And I am not innocent. At the beginning, I was little Miss Goody Two Shoes. And even toward the end, because I had achieved in their hierarchy of, like you were saying, the spectrum of families, those families that were more conservative were also thought to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Just as culture dictated, which was totally wrong, but
I didn't want to yell.
Yes. I get you. Also at headquarters, there was a hierarchy too, because nobody stayed for very long. The turnover was extremely high. So for me to have been there for 4 years, there were very few people there that had been there that would have stayed that long. There was a very core group that would stay.
Yeah. I remember there being like maybe a handful of people, maybe 10 max, like between families that were staff and single students that were staff. Like And I don't even, do you remember how many people were there usually, typically?
When I did staffing, there was at least, I would say, close to 200.
That's what I was thinking, 200 to 300
200
max.
single staff.
Okay.
And then you had the staff families, but there were maybe, I would say, maybe 10 staff families.
Yeah.
And those staff families were, the husbands were employed in very, very top leadership roles of the departments.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wives stayed at home and took care of the younger kids. And usually their older adult kids worked at headquarters with the rest of us. They were volunteers too. Yeah. And the younger kids worked there too sometimes, because the ATI was not above child labor.
No,
not at all.
No. Do you recall the youngest person that you know that was there?
12.
Working. 12.
Without a family or a parent supervision, 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know the youngest child that worked there, like while you were there, even if they were a staff family member?
I remember them being around and helping with service projects. I don't remember if they actually were in the office on a regular basis. Maybe 16, 14, okay. 14 to 16.
Okay.
I'm still friends with some of those staff families. I could ask them what they actually did, because I'd lose track of the kids and who they were, what ages they were, because usually there were 8 of them.
Yeah.
Of them, yes.
8 or more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic ATI. You know, if you had 6 or more kids, you were very, very pious and blessed.
Yes. So I'm trying to think. I was just thinking of something. So we had kind of talked on my episode about, a lot of the women, girls that go up to headquarters, they go to serve because that's basically all we have as an option in that belief system. And then also we talked about, finding a husband is kind of the underlying reason people, females would go up to headquarters. Is that something that kind of was on your radar while you were there?
At the beginning, no, because I turned 20 the first year I was there. So I turned 21. No, I turned 20 while I was there. So I was still very young, still very sheltered. So that wasn't in the forefront of my mind. It was too innocent to figure that out. But within a year or two, that was always a prevalent thing. As far as this would be a really good opportunity to find one. My home church had maybe all of 3 guys that I could choose from. So this was, that was in my mind. I'm getting older, and I guess by the time I was 22, that was really old to me, because a lot of them are already, getting married, and that you wanted to be married young and have kids young, and that we can have more kids. And so age was an impression to me. I felt like I was getting too old too fast. And I wanted to start family early. So that was, I would say, within a year or two of being there, that was definitely a thought in my mind, although I didn't know how to pursue it. And I'll tell you a funny story. So since I hadn't been around a lot of guys, we weren't allowed to date. We weren't even allowed to look at guys very much. They weren't allowed to look at us. It was very, very forbidden there at headquarters too, because there were stories floating all around all the time that a guy went by a girl's desk 3 times in a week and he got sent home because they thought he liked the girl because he happened to be at her desk too many times. So there were strict rules and fear instilled there, where the guys couldn't show interest in the girls because, they could get sent home. And also the girl will probably get sent home too.
Right. Even though she may have done nothing, but
yeah, she may have done nothing. She may have smiled at him, and it probably would depend on the level of the guy's status too. If he was higher status than she was, or had been there longer, then he would stay and she would go home. Right. So it was uneven there in that. So it was frowned upon. Of course, it always happens when you get a group of of young kids from 18 to 25, it's going to happen. And you could get reported easily, and you never knew who was reporting who. So, what was I going to say? There was rabbit trail. Hold on.
We were talking about, the focus of finding a husband.
Funny story. So I didn't know how to talk to guys. I didn't know how to flirt. I didn't know how to be friendly. I didn't know how to talk to them without a huge amount of fear, or because, for fear that I would lead them down the wrong path, because that was always the woman's responsibility, not theirs. And so I would just kind of avoided them like the plague, or I would be friendly, kind of friendly, but I was very awkward friendly. So, I couldn't really be friends with them. And I remember my dad coming to me and saying, Marcy, you can talk to the guys that are there. And I was like, well, yeah, but, and I was like, the conversation was out of the blue for me, but I must have said something that triggered him to think that I was being way too conservative as far as not talking to the guys. And it's like, you can talk to them. They're humans too. And I was like, okay, all right, well, whatever, Dad. I was always the sidekick. I did not have any interest there, or none that I was aware of. I may have been very, very unaware of it.
Well, the other part of that is you may have been unaware of it because they couldn't have made their intentions known either, unless they had gotten your father's permission to talk to you and all of that stupid stuff. So
all of the courtship stupid stuff. Yes.
Right. So if they were a person who was following, the whole teachings and everything, they might not necessarily have.
Yeah, they would have gotten sent home, so they couldn't, they couldn't do a whole lot. Yeah, they really couldn't.
Yeah.
So, toward the end of headquarters time, I chaperoned a couple. I think just the once or maybe twice, because both parents had said yes to the courtship, but they couldn't be courting at headquarters and they weren't ready to leave, and so I chaperoned a get together off campus with the parents' permission, but not headquarters. It was a secret at headquarters. That was the awkwardest thing ever.
I bet.
It was the awkwardest thing. And I loved them both, and they are still both happily married, and I would do it again for them, but oh my goodness, very awkward. ATI terms. I mean, not in anybody else's terms, in ATI terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh gosh. I can think of two couples that I know that could have been the two you're talking about. So
yeah, they had to stay within 10 feet of me or something like that. So they would walk ahead so they could talk, so I couldn't hear them, but I still had to be within line of sight. So
God,
it was bad because the parents had all kinds of rules.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
So insane.
It was
so
insane.
So do you know anybody that we went to, or that was at headquarters with you, that is still in it? Or
most of them are out. I'm trying to think. Some of the acquaintances that I knew that I worked with there but were not close friends may still be in it. I can think of maybe one, and I don't know how deeply.
Yeah.
So I just know that some of the views are still the same.
Oh, okay.
But 90% of them have gotten out.
Okay.
Yeah. At varying levels of varying degrees.
Right.
Of the walk.
Right.
And I know, yes, it's a spectrum. And I know all of them still struggle with the same things that I struggle with, as far as the brainwashing and the principles coming back to mind that are lies that you have to rewire your brain not to think. We've talked about it on multiple occasions.
Yeah. I think you are the only person from headquarters that I really have ever gotten into a conversation about anything with. So I really don't know where anybody is, but it's I was only there for 3 months. So it was kind of the friendships can only be so deep,
Yes, agreed. And 4 years is you kind of go through the fire together after 4 years there. because you go through staff turnover and you go through some really crazy stuff that happens at headquarters all the time. So those were forged in the fire. I keep up with some of them more than I do others, but most of them via Facebook.
Yeah.
I thought that story was very short for the amount of time that I was there, but I can't. I'm not pulling details that, like, it didn't go on rabbit trails that we could explore.
Right. Well, I mean, because when I was there, I had such a different experience coming into it.
Yes.
There were things in that short amount of time that were like, Yes. What?
Yes, because you were coming in with it with fresh eyes, and I was going into it. I came out of it. I was going into it with it just having been inundated with it, already brainwashed,
right?
And then coming out of it.
You didn't have a frame of reference to go, well, this
I really didn't.
This is worldly, and so is this in here, and they say this, but that doesn't seem right, because you were taught not to.
We couldn't question anything. We were not allowed to question anything, especially the guru like Mr. Gothard.
Right.
I think that there's an inner part of me that reacts to injustice. That's just part of my personality.
I'm having issues with my mixer.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, got it.
All right. So there's an inner part of me that has trouble with injustice. If I sense it at all, I react really hard to it. And I think that toward the end of my time at headquarters, maybe even before I started questioning things, I started feeling the injustice of a lot of it. The injustice of the guys being sent to Northwoods and the girls being sent home. The injustice of girls being expected to do more or less, or allowed to do less than the guys. Opportunities were given to the guys that were not given to the girls, as far as job status and things like that. Different things like that. I started seeing a lot of discrepancies, and I started saying, you know what, this isn't right. And it felt wrong to me. And so my spirit started fighting a lot longer than longer before I got to the point of saying, you know what, I'm going to listen to this rock music, or you know what, I'm going to watch this movie, or I'm going to stop wearing dresses, or I'm going to buck the system at home. By the time I made it home from headquarters, I was done. So when I got home, I had a conversation point blank with my parents that said, I am going to listen to the music I want to listen to. I will not follow those standards. I won't follow the standards of dress. I won't follow the standards on the movies. I'm not going to follow courtship anymore either. I had a courtship ring that I had committed to Dad on a ceremony when I think I was 16. So I took that off. I went through a whole laundry list of things that said no longer doing. What came out of that was that I was being rebellious. I was out from under the umbrella of protection, that in so doing, I was opening holes in that umbrella to my siblings. They were sure that I was going to send my siblings down the path of evil because of my bad example. Pretty much said that I would be responsible if my siblings lost salvation over it, or turned away from God over it. A lot was said to bring me back in line under that umbrella. They didn't want me to move out because that was also out from under the umbrella, which I did as soon as I was able. Because I've been living away from home for 4 years. I was like, I want to take the next step and do this by myself. Right. I had started feeling some independence. And you would think that would be something that a parent would want a 24-year-old person to do. Because I was 24 by then.
Yeah.
And no.
Right.
Also, I still think that there was some part of Mom that wanted me to come home and run the house for her.
Yeah. How young was your youngest sibling when you came home?
She was in 99. She would have been 4. So by the time I came home, she was 8.
Okay.
So it would have been 8, 10, 14, and 16 But also by the time I got home, I had a 16-year-old sister at home that had taken over my duties. So as each daughter left, the next daughter stepped up. So she wasn't as in need as much toward the end when I came home as she was when I first left. So that first year, too hard. She did not want me to go back that second time at all.
Yeah, because when you have all of those kids, you need help raising them.
Yes, you do. And as a single mom with only two, I understand why she was in some agony.
Right.
Also, their responsibility for having so many children.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, it's that kind of like I understand like children should have responsibilities in the home, right?
Yes,
like I don't think they should have a free ride. I'm about teaching responsibility, teaching them how to care for themselves, care for their, surroundings, teach them life skills, right? So, but to put the whole entire household upkeep on kids is just, and that's kind of basically like what that promotes, is because the husband is out working, the mom is home homeschooling, and she is so exhausted by the end of the day from homeschooling, 5, 6, 8, 10 kids that, she doesn't have the energy to cook and clean and laundry and everything. And, so yeah.
Yeah. It's like doing 3 jobs. You're trying to school, you're trying to do all the normal household and running your home type of things. And then also you have babies, and babies are exhausting. Being pregnant, having babies is exhausting. Taking care of babies is exhausting. Nursing is exhausting. So if even if you have like maybe 3 young babies, but you've got a whole bunch of older kids, all you can manage is the 3 younger kids, or you can school the middle half and the older ones take care of the younger ones. Like there's just no way to do that well. Somebody gets neglected somewhere, or somebody's education gets neglected somewhere, or the house gets neglected, or, it's too much.
It is. It really is. And then, a lot of the teaching is that the women are supposed to keep the home, right? They're keepers at home and keepers of the home. And so it should be perfect for your husband when he comes home.
Yes.
And that's just sometimes unrealistic.
Yeah.
And
unrealistic. Yeah.
And, it's also not taught that, the husbands can also help the wife with the kids in the home. And it's like they're supposed to come home and be, catered to, and the kids are supposed to come second once the husband comes home. And it's like, well, those kids can't fend for themselves.
Yes.
So that really bothered me. Like when I was young and married and had little kids, I'm like, my kids can't take care of themselves, but you want me to run around and take care of them and you and your grown ass man? I don't think so.
Yes, I was fortunate. So here's a weird dichotomy to that. So that thought system was taught exactly like you just said it. Now, the system that I observed in my own home was Dad always helped, or most of the time. At least in the evenings and on the weekends, he worked very hard. He would iron clothes for church. He's a service-oriented person, and so a lot of times he would help in those respects. Now, the homeschooling and the baby care and all of that was left to the women. Most of the time, things he did were more manly things, but he did help. I think, but that mindset for me, so I saw a good example in my dad to a certain extent that he helped more than what maybe some other men in the ATI did. However, that mindset transferred for me over into marriage, where I thought that I had to serve the heck out of him. Like I had to cook every meal. I had to do all the childcare. I had to do all the home upkeep. I had to do, even when he was the one staying at home all day and I was the one out working. So even though when roles were switched, I still thought that I had to do all those things. So even though I saw a better example of it, that mindset still transferred to my marriage where I thought I had to be the 1950s housewife.
Right.
And we did have things like, oh my gosh, it's 4:30, scramble, everyone, clean up, and get dinner on the table before Dad got home. We didn't do that. It was a mad dash at 4:30 every day.
Yeah.
Dad's coming.
Yep.
Yep. Because the house couldn't be dirty for him and dinner needed to be started. Sometimes Mom would just throw onions in a frying pan so that it smelled good. She told me as a trick one day, she said, Marcy, when you're married, if your husband ever comes home from work and you don't have dinner on yet, just put onions in a frying pan, put a lid on it, and just tell him dinner will be in a minute. Because it smells like dinner's ready.
I love it. That is awesome.
Is that not quintessential to this?
Yeah, it is. It is. Let's make it look like we've got our shit together.
Yes. And we can't tell that husband when he gets home to get a damn bowl of cereal. Eat your cereal. Like milk and cereal. You can get it yourself. You're a grown person.
You might want to have a little snack. Dinner's going to be late.
Yes. Or I'm not cooking dinner tonight. You can eat your cereal, or you can go get a Hot Pocket or a burrito out of the fridge. That's not that hard. He does not have to have a 4-course meal every single night.
Right. Yeah.
But that's what was expected.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so funny story. My husband cooks. I don't.
Oh, nice. Lucky you.
When my kids were super young, they had a lot of food sensitivities, and I cooked 3 meals a day. Every single day. It was gluten, soy, corn, dairy, egg, and rice free for a while.
Oh, that's like, what do you eat?
Yeah. Vegetables.
Yes, lots of vegetables.
I would rotate a different soup every day. So we had like potato soup, butternut squash soup, split pea soup, which they hated. We would do beans. And then I would cook a gluten-free type of breakfast every morning, like muffins or scones or whatever. Yeah. And so I was baking or cooking almost every single day, almost all day long. And when I married my husband, he said he cooks. I'm like, I'll help you every once in a while.
Yeah. That and another reason, that one reason was a good reason to marry him, right? Yeah.
I mean, it was on the list of like, he needs to be able to cook. Like, you can't cook, meh.
Oh, that's hysterical. Yes.
So, it's like now we have, when I'm physically able to, I try to help out, but like for a long time, it was like I was constantly like working and running kids around and everything. And it was just like, he would cook, and he's so good at like, oh, it's, I don't have a plan, so let me just throw something together. And I was never that kind of person. Like, I have to like plan my weekly menu, go to the grocery, cook all of the meals Saturday and Sunday for the rest of the week, put it in the freezer, and be able to just pull things out.
Yes.
Like doing that with a bunch of little kids, like I had 3, young kids when I was a single mom. And I was just like, I can't do homework, cook, dinner, and put a load of laundry on. It's like, I just need dinner.
You literally have a 30-minute window to get him fed when you get him home.
Right.
And plus all the other things that have to be done when you walk through the front door. So yes, otherwise you got melty kids. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, which is why we don't really eat very healthy here. We eat microwave things a lot. I've learned what they'll eat that I can cook in 10 minutes on the stove. So that's pretty much what we stick with. They're lucky to get a big meal very often.
You got to do what you got to do. I mean,
it is what it is. It is what it is. They get fed. Everybody's full. They're happy.
Yep.
It's got a protein, a carb, and a veggie. So we got our bases covered. The protein maybe peanut butter, the carb maybe noodles, and the veggie maybe apples to go with the peanut butter. But we got it.
Basic food groups. We're covered.
Basic food groups. We're covered.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So, I guess we can kind of wrap this up. And,
Yeah.
I think the next episode, we're going to start talking about specifics of the teachings, kind of dissect them, kind of give our opinions on some of them. If you are a survivor of the ATI IBLP cult, or the Fundamental Baptist groups, and you have an idea for an episode, you'd like to hear what we have to say on a specific topic, please find us on the social medias, Umbrella Rebellion. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. I haven't set up a Twitter. I hate Twitter. Not doing it. Sorry.
I don't have one either, so we're good.
Yeah, so drop us a comment, drop us a message, and we definitely want to talk about things that are relevant to you and what you're thinking about. We did have on our live somebody suggest that we need to talk about dating.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe
we
can go into a little bit, I guess, our history of dating, marriage, in how the cult kind of affected our relationships. And I'm in a very healthy relationship now, so we can talk about different experiences between healthy and unhealthy relationships. So
I like that.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us this week on the Umbrella Rebellion. Don't forget to subscribe and like and follow us, and we hope that you will join us next week and join the rebellion. Bye.